2.
Hey, Linz, what are you listening to?
Brian, you share yours and I'll share mine.
With millions of podcasts, how do you choose?
We are here to help you find that next bingeable podcast.
Or that piece of content you'll follow regularly.
You're listening to Feed Drops.
All right, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Feed Drops. I am Brian, and to my this way is Linz. Linz,
Hey.
welcome back from Oklahoma. How was your trip?
Oh, it was a great trip, and it's nice to be back in California. Loving the May Gray going on where I'm at. Really, that's my favorite.
Was legitimately raining here earlier, which was cool.
Yeah, no sweatshirt weather is my favorite. Yeah. So.
Mine as well. Well, we've got a couple of cool episodes lined up today. And for those of you just joining Feed Drops, my name is Brian. I run Sitch Radio in Irvine, California. And Linz runs Growth Network Podcasts out of Los Angeles. And we have teamed up to help you discover a couple new shows a week that you might like.
Yeah, we have a format where we each pick a show from submissions or from shows that we've actively sought out. And we pick a show, and the two of us both listen to both shows, and we come together and talk about it, and hopefully pick some clips that you would find interesting, and then we all have a good time.
Yeah, and today we are going to be talking about Spy Hards. This is the show I'm bringing to you this week, and it is hosted by, and I love it, agents Scott and Cam, along with guest operative Marianne.
Yeah, that is it's fun, you know. They really commit to the bit there. That's
that
really
they do, and they are reviewing Zero Dark 30. Which we're reviewing this episode and sharing it with you. And Linz, what do you have for us?
I have, what we have is Got Skills. And Got Skills is a 10 minutes or less podcast that takes concepts from it's kind of like a spinoff. It takes concepts from the Let's Talk About Skills Baby podcast, and it kind of goes in deeper and makes them really accessible for people at early in their career, or maybe who are looking in transition, looking for a new job. And it's actually a podcast that my company created, and we love it because it's short, bite-sized, and accessible, and we'll get into that one a bit later.
And you know, before we take a quick break, not just bite-sized pieces and actionable takeaways for somebody getting started. I took things away from this episode, and I'm kind of excited and can't wait to share those with you.
Oh, man, that's so great. I can't wait to hear it.
But before we get into the shows, we're going to take a quick break. All right, we are back, and we are going to dive head over heels into Spy Hards. And this first clip is one I chose, and here we go.
I wonder if it was almost like too much recency, where it was like, okay, I've just heard about all these news events the last couple of years. Now I'm watching the movie chronicling them. It feels a little too soon, or maybe I'm a little exhausted on this sort of thing. But I did really admire how technically well made it was and the performances. So it was a movie I walked out positive on, but also not swept up on. And I will say, like, the difference in time was very interesting when it came to rewatching this movie.
You know, I chose this clip because he pointed out something that I don't think I realized in myself, the recency of it. And whether it hits those patriotic chords and you get upset and angry all over again, and or, you know, you've just heard about it so much in the news and the media that it wasn't as impactful. But what did you think of that?
Well, that really made me think about the format of the show, Spy Hards, that we're reviewing, is they go back and they talked about what was the feeling when they walked out of the theater the first time. You know, when they have a reviewer on the show and they're going back to their original review. What did you write about it? You know, it's 10 years back at this point. And so this is you get time to reflect. And then, you know, later in the show, they're sort of like, what is your reflection now? And so I just really enjoyed that that the show itself gave us that opportunity to go back in time, and then also like, okay, yeah, when the wound was still really so open, and there was a lot to heal around as a nation and as people who had been traumatized by some crazy things, that now, with a little more time has passed, how do we see it differently?
Yeah.
And they did a great job of talking about that.
Yeah. On to clip number 2.
I need some intel. And frankly, I do not want to use any enhanced interrogation techniques on you. So how did this film come to be?
So this was the second collaboration of director Catherine Bigelow, coming off of her Oscar win for The Hurt Locker, and she was reteaming with that film's writer, Mark Bull. And Mark Bull was the writer-producer on that film as well as this one. And in his backstory, he was a journalist who'd worked in a lot of hot zones. He'd embedded with troops. He'd covered the war on terror for quite a while. So it made a lot of sense for him to perhaps make a movie like this.
And I think more and more that I've been involved in podcasting, I've learned to appreciate and seek out those who write. Because they are really kind of the unsung hero. I used to love the show 2.5 Men, and you loved it for the banter and the jokes and the characters. But then as I matured, I'll use the word matured, it's like, wow, those writers are just phenomenal. And I think I've really learned to appreciate the craft of writing, especially. And that's why I chose that clip, because the writer and the director, they should be celebrated more so than the star of the show, in my humble opinion.
Yeah. I enjoyed that clip because as someone who, I will admit, I've not seen Zero Dark 30.
Wow.
And so to me, hearing the story of how it was made and the sort of the twists and turns it took and everything actually made me want to go watch it. That backstory gives me a little bit more of a reason to care. And so that was cool.
Yeah, it was a good movie. It is worth the watch. So, Linz, you're gonna have to. We'll have to do a follow-up to this episode.
Yeah.
And one last thing about that clip, I love how they stay in character. I'm not going to use any enhanced interrogation techniques. They just ham it up, which is it makes it so much more entertaining to consume.
Right. Yeah. Commit to it. Be in that, and like look for clever ways to yes and themselves there.
Right. All right. The next clip is yours, Linz. Are you setting it up, or are we going to roll it?
Let's roll it.
There's a number of entertainments that were produced around this time commenting on the feelings surrounding 9/11 that I think we look at now and say like, oh, that's kind of messy. But there's like an immediacy to it that's very true to how we felt. Scott, we're both Star Trek fans. Season 3 of Enterprise is you too. Oh, Marianne, perfect.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay, well, yeah, season 3 of Enterprise is all of this response to 9/11. And it's something that now they look at and go, well, boy, we're a little uncomfortable with some of what we did. But I look at it and go, it's very important for how people were feeling at this moment.
Well, I think this speaks to sort of, I don't know, the timely or the timelessness of things, and I think Zero Dark 30 at the time, the reason I didn't watch it was it seemed like it was kind of caught up in the fervor of the moment and less like an impartial view that was seen from a little bit more distance. And so, Brian, what did it bring up for you?
There were a lot of movies coming out about, conflicts. And it's funny because when I was in the service, the SEALs were the silent warriors. It's so much a brand now. And if you're a SEAL, I think you've written a book. That's probably a prerequisite in buds, it seems like. And I'm being, a little hyperbole there. However, there's a lot of material out firsthand from, various people that worked in special operations. So, I can see the points, but, a lot of the stuff that has come out written by people that were there have been proven false. But, when you're in that intense environment, what you remember might not be what happened.
Right. That's the
So,
generous way to approach it, I would say.
yeah.
Well, I also found funny that they homaged Star Trek, and that Star Trek had that their plot reflected, and it's like things like Law and Order, I mean, all the procedurals at the time, that's all they talked about, and yeah, now you can kind of sense it, that there's a different energy of driving the content there, but it's a true one in the same way that you look back in the 40s and the film, and the newscasts and things, so that it really was there.
Yeah. Yeah. Let's roll your number 2.
Yeah, I mean, one of my gripes with the film is that, and I still have it on second viewing, is that we're supposed to be the good guys. We're supposed to be the ones who, we don't execute somebody without a trial, even the worst of monsters. That's what all the Nuremberg trials were about, prosecuting people who did that, and treating even the worst of criminals with due process and in a civilized way. And we didn't do that with Bin Laden. It would have been, I mean, I understand there were all these arguments about, and at the time, about how that you couldn't have a fair trial, or what do you do with this guy? And I get that, but I'm not sure that the way that we dealt with it was particularly helpful either. It didn't hold America up in a great light.
Yeah. Well, it certainly speaks to the messiness of the whole darn thing. And, also, so what is just an entertaining movie on the other front, right? It's made to make it, to take us on a journey we weren't there for. Right. And,
it's, I mean, politically speaking, into the laws of this nation, and then the Geneva Convention, which are, globally accepted laws of conflict, a criminal in the justice system is, and in my opinion, should be treated differently than an enemy combatant. However, I mean, at this time, there were a lot of weird things going on with how we labeled, categorized, and spoke of people. Guantanamo Bay was stood up to house, what are we calling them? A lot of them weren't enemy combatants. They were not taken off the battlefield. They were taken out of their home in the middle of the night. So we called them detainees. But we also housed them on a soil that really had no law. Cuba didn't care what laws were being adhered to. The U.S. didn't have to abide by U.S. law because they were detainees on foreign soil. There was just a lot of weirdness that came out. And I think that I understand what she's saying. And part of me is like, yes, we should be the bigger person in the room. However, when bad things happen, we're clearly not. And it's sad, but that's the reality.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I mean, I think it speaks to the, the polarity of what, the juxtaposition of the truth, where you have to be both kind and fierce sometimes,
right.
And that's how that manifests on the world stage makes for a lot of great movies.
Yeah. Some entertaining, what did he call them? Not production. I forgot the term he used. Anyway, a lot of good movies and books came out in the last 20 years of conflict. But all right, this is the last clip for Spy Hards.
I mean, you could talk about, Spy Kids. I don't think people's, reactions to that are going to be any different, because it's a kids film. Exactly. But this is a reality-based story, and it's a very recent one, and it's a shared trauma that we have all survived in one way or another. Yeah. I mean, as I say, 7/7 is an important thing to me, and that gets a good 30 seconds in the film.
Yeah.
Lip service, basically, but that's fine. But maybe Cam, is there any connection on your side of things? Do you feel that extra connection because you're from North America?
I think just our proximity and closeness to the U.S. We read a lot of U.S. news. We're pretty up to date on what's going on in the U.S. And so obviously Canada relies on the U.S. for a lot as well. And so like when all the 9/11 stuff was going on, like we were just glued to the TVs. And I tend to find Canada will often, when there's threats towards the U.S., Canada takes it extremely seriously because it could impact us as well. So there was a fear really coming out of 9/11 that things could happen in Canada. And there was an attack in, Toronto. There have been incidents in Canada. And so I do recall at the time, like, that real sense of like we were with the US on what they wanted to do. And it didn't mean we weren't critical of things along the way, but there was a support for what the US was going through very strongly coming from Canada.
I included that one just because I don't know that I'd thought too hard about the Canadian perspective on this conflict, or maybe many of them. And so just to sort of think, one, that this show, a show about, reviewing spy movies, gave me a global perspective, a guy from the UK and a guy from Canada and a woman who used to be in New York. And now, anyway, it just kind of was like, wow, I learned a lot more than I expected to.
I wanted to wake up and read Canadian news, but I decided no. And then the Blame Canada song came to my head from South. Anyway, I digress. But you're absolutely right. It does, that global perspective, because it wasn't just the U.S., in conflict for the last 20 years. It was, a multi-nation, represented military. And yeah, it's just, we here in America, we think of us and, we're the biggest, baddest, and nobody else matters. And it's very self-serving, and we should probably take a step back and take a deep breath and thank those partner nations who did help affect change. So,
yeah, so we have a narcissist nation, perhaps. So that's been, talking about Spy Hards, and we hope that you have enjoyed listening to it. There's a lot more. We did pull a few quotes from it, but they have pretty long, extensive episodes talking about each of the shows. So if you liked any of that, then you're going to love the longer episodes. And I'm sure that the other ones, I kind of want to hear what they say about some of the other spy movies out there. So they piqued my interest.
They really did. And again, they do it in such an entertaining fashion that I too want to scroll through and say, oh, I've watched that movie. Let's hear what they had to say about it. So, yeah. And then hopefully they don't ruin it for me.
Yeah.
But, that's my personal problem, not theirs. So
that would be true. So, all right. Well, we're going to take a quick break. And when we come back, we will discuss Got Skills. All right. And we're back. And we're here to talk about Got Skills. Before I do too much talking about it, we're just going to go into the first clip.
And this first clip is one I chose.
I've loved this journey I've been on of discovering the power of skills to unlock human potential, because all of those things are skills. And I think sometimes we skip those components.
Processing past experiences and confidence speaking about them or anything else and taking up space all add up to some of the most durable skills you can hone.
This spoke to me, Linz, because we do learn things as we walk through this life, and it does affect how we apply what we've learned. And we might not necessarily stop to think, wow, that was a learned skill that I learned through experience, but you don't look at it as a skill. And if you don't, that means you can't hone it, make it better, sharpen the saw, as Franklin Covey would say.
Yeah. And ultimately, you can't really advocate for yourself when it comes time to try to get a new job or try to advance your career or anything, any project you want to do. If you haven't reflected upon it and taken the time to sort of define maybe what it is you're getting better at or trying to do, then being able to explain it to other people and getting other people on board is going to be real, real hard.
Yep, that's a very good point. And clip 2.
I don't think we talk enough about social capital, which is literally the opposite side of the tangible hard skills that a person is tagged with. So social capital is just the idea that, well, what you know is important. Who you know continues to play a role in how you move through the workforce.
Yeah, that's definitely an underutilized, it's not something we were taught in schools. I don't think that, and maybe in the private institutions, this was a more commonly understood thing, that the people and the ability to call on them and have them take your call is sort of built on the trust you built between each other and common ground and everything. And so if you have built relationships with people, you can use them in this way. And if you don't, it's a lot harder to get through some things.
And that clip made me stop and think about the school environment, which you brought up. What if networking were taught, say, in the 5th, 6th grade before you move on to middle school or junior high, and how learning how to network and the value of others, how that might affect, say, bullying on the playground, if you will, or making it a required course your freshman year of high school, and how that might affect who what you experience, what you learn by bringing people into your circle you normally wouldn't, or having the skills to bring those people into your circle.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, I think the best of school does that. I think when school is operating its best, it's exposing kids to new people, new ideas, and each other, and forcing them to try new things with each other. And, I think to me, that happened a lot more in sort of the arts and the peripheral, band or, choir, those kinds of things. It's like, having to interact with people and do things outside of the norm happened less so with like the regular classes,
Right. Unless you were cheating off of them.
Yeah.
Was that just me?
That was probably just you. It wasn't just you. It wasn't just you.
All right. Moving on to 3.
We're here to remind you that the more you practice your skills story, the better you'll get at telling it. And the more everyone else will believe you've got skills.
That's the truth. I think we all like to think we can wing everything, and that the best people just know what to say off the top of their heads, but they know what to say because they've said some version of it before and it worked. And so they pulled it out again. And much like comedians who practice every night to make it look like they just made it up just then, that's the name of the game.
Yeah. And that's such a great reference to comedians. They'll write new jokes and they'll try them in smaller venues. And if it hits, then they'll work it into a larger venue. When I first opened Sitch Radio, I attended a lunch networking meetup that was local. And 2 reasons I went. Number 1, it was free lunch, which was cool. Number 2, they gave me 2 minutes to pitch. And I went week after week, and I would watch the crowd, and I would take notes of the feedback or people coming up to me to A, give me a critique, and or B, ask for more information, because I hooked them. And when I hooked them, I would ask them, what resonated with you the most out of that? And they would tell me. So I would make note to keep that in my pitch. But, over the course of a few months, you get really good pitching every week and fine tuning that. And that's, again, just like the comedian throwing jokes out to smaller venues.
Yeah. Whatever you practice is what is top of mind,
Yeah. All right. This next clip was Lynn's.
All right.
I think sometimes the idea of skills get a little bit of a bad rap because we think about a skill being the ability to weld metal together, and it is, but it's also the emotional intelligence to process past experiences and to use them as fuel to shape and create your future. That is a skill. Confidently public speaking is a skill. Being able to show up in a room and not feel small because you perceive others to be large is a skill.
Well, yeah, this one I think speaks to being resourceful and understanding that the things you've done make you stronger and better, more capable, and that feeling more capable also makes you more capable. And so these are a lot of the things I've spent a lot of time focusing on over the past few years, and I feel like they've bear fruit in terms of what I've been able to accomplish.
Yeah, most definitely. And welding is a skill, and you learn theory and concept, and then you develop that skill over time by welding and welding and welding. And it's the same thing with a speech or a presentation. If you open up PowerPoint and bang out a 20 slide deck and you don't practice it, you're not, it's not really a skill. You need to practice it and deliver it with commitment and intent. And I think that clip really spoke to that.
Yeah, I think so. And it definitely, whatever you do over and over again is what you will do when it comes to crunch time. I had
a lieutenant in the Marine Corps. We've all heard the saying, practice makes perfect. Mm-hmm. He added the perfect to it. Perfect practice makes perfect. Because if you practice the wrong way, what are you going to do when it comes game time? You're going to perform in the wrong manner. So he took it to the next level.
Yeah, as you might imagine. All right. So that was us talking about Got Skills. They're short little bite-sized episodes, and you can find out more about it in the show notes and on our website. And our website is feeddrops.com. And that is also where you can comment on this episode. Let us know which of these episodes spoke to you, which one you would want to go listen to or something like that. And then you can also, if you're a podcaster, you can submit your show on the website.
Yeah, and if you would like this show ad-free and early, you can head on over to Substack and search for Feed Drops. There'll be a link in the show notes as well. And, for a little minor commitment monthly to help keep this show going, you can get it a week early and ad-free.
Yeah, and you will also get access to the video so that you can watch us and our shenanigans. And I think that's probably worth the cost of admission, but probably the ad-freeness is probably pretty nice as well.
I just can't wait for the video blooper roll, towards the end of the year, because we're getting pretty good at those.
It'll be longer than the episodes themselves.
All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us for another episode of Feed Drops. If you know of somebody looking for podcasts to listen to, recommend this show because we're recommending others. And if you do have a podcast, like Lynn said, head on over to feeddrops.com, submit your show, and we will be more than happy to take a listen. We're averaging about 5. Actually, that's a lie. We're averaging about 8 or so submissions a week. We're only reviewing 2 a week. So make sure you're throwing those URLs in there for your best episodes and grab our attention.
Yeah, we're really excited. It's been a lot of fun to listen to everyone's submissions, but we're definitely going to need more as time goes on. So please don't stop.
Please don't. We will see you next week.
Bye-bye.